Christensen VlogCast. I am your host, Barbara Christensen, and I'm excited to be here today. I am so thrilled by the things that I am learning about and that I'm being able to share with you. And hopefully you're taking what you're hearing and you're going back and you're talking to your doctors and you're doing your own research and finding what is your truth. Because really, that's what this journey is all about, isn't it? It's about finding our own truth. So today I want to talk about something that I've really kind of heard little bits and pieces about throughout the paleo, like the whole paleo globe, I guess you would say, where everyone brings it up, but nothing's really talked about it. And so I want to talk about lectins. So what are lectins? Lectins are this type of protein that can bind to cell membranes. And they are sugar binding and offer a way for molecules to stick together without getting the whole immune system involved. And that can influence the cell-to-cell interaction. Now, there's mechanisms enabling one cell to influence the behavior of another, and they almost certainly existed in even the one-cell organisms. This whole one-cell organism talking to another one-cell organism long before there were these multi-cell organisms on Earth. And our body uses lectins to achieve many of these basic functions, including the cell-to-cell adherence, the inflammatory modulation, as well as programmed cell death. So you can see why that would be so important to your health, knowing that, like with cancer cells are the cells that are supposed to die, and they don't die. And so, even yeast cells communicate with one another for mating by secreting a few kinds of small peptides. And think about the higher level cells in higher animals communicate by means of hundreds of kinds of signal molecules. And these include these proteins and those small peptides and amino acids and steroids and retinoids and fatty acid derivatives and even some dissolved gases like carbon monoxide. So if we start to break this down and think about something like enzyme receptors. And when activated, either they function directly as an enzyme or are directly associated with enzymes that they activate. Now, one of these that I have also been hearing lots and lots of talk about is the leptin receptor, which is very linked into this metabolic syndrome that we talk about all the time and obesity. And leptin is a hormone produced by the fat cells in your body. It comes from the Greek word meaning thin. And you need those leptin levels to be going in that direction and being produced and being used. And if you're going to think clearly, if you're going to be in a good mood, and if you're going to tell your brain, hey, I'm full, I've had enough nutrition. So as I'm going through this, when I say lectin and leptin, you may get confused, but the fact is that lectin is, at the very least, a big contributing cause to the leptin resistance that we see today. So if you're following me and you're following this paleo-veggie lifestyle that I more or less created because the overall paleo plan just didn't connect to what I felt was my nutritional truth, how does this affect what you eat? And especially if you're considering, you read all these blogs out there and everyone's talking about these lectins and that they're found in, grains, which most of you aren't eating, although some of you are eating pseudo grains. and nuts and legumes and nightshade vegetables, and that they've all been linked with digestive distress and leaky gut syndrome and chronic inflammation. And you look at that and you think, wow, some of my favorite foods are seeds and legumes and nightshade vegetables. And in fact, the top 8 allergens also contain some of the highest amounts of lectins out there. So let's break it down again. What exactly are these lectins, right? So we talked about them being a type of protein that can bind to cell membranes. But lectins were first described in 1888 by Peter Hermann Stillmark, and he was working with castor bean extracts. And so if you've watched Breaking Bad, then you've no doubt heard of ricin, and that really is what Stillmark was working on when lectins were discovered. Now, there's many members of this lectin protein family, and a lot of them, they can do things like clump together your red blood cells. And this can induce that antigen-antibody reaction. And so think about all of these things that we're seeing in our health, the food allergies and the celiac disease and the autoimmune disease and rheumatoid arthritis. And so many of these lectins that are these powerful allergens, they're also this protein, which is a principal allergen of rubber latex. And you know me, then you know that's important because I have a serious latex allergy. My daughter is sensitive to latex. I've seen, since I first started having this issue, I've seen latex allergies and sensitivities going up off the chart. It used to be you didn't know anyone with a latex sensitivity. Now everyone knows someone with a latex sensitivity. And so they've taken that and they've actually engineered into this genetically modified tomato for its antifungal properties. So you could pretty easily put 2 and 2 together and figure out that if we're going to start seeing an outbreak of tomato allergies in our near future among these latex-sensitive individuals. And so when people say to me, well, what's your problem with genetically modified foods? Things like this are my problem with genetically modified foods, because you're not going to go to the store and pick up a tomato and it's going to have a label on it that says, caution, latex-sensitive individuals. No, you're not going to see that. And so that's where my whole issue is with things like that. So back to the lectins, the thing that's very important to know, first off about lectins, is that they can be blocked by simple sugars and oligosaccharides. So what are these oligosaccharides? Long word, hard to pronounce. They are carbohydrates which have 3 to 10 simple sugars linked together. And they're found in small amounts in a lot of plants, like tree root, Jerusalem artichokes, onions, leeks, garlic, legumes, wheat, asparagus, jicama, and other plant foods. And here in America, we're lucky if we get 1 gram a day naturally in our diet, whereas Europeans often can get up to 10 grams a day in their diet. Now, I find this really interesting. Now, human milk contains a high concentration of these diverse, soluble oligosaccharides. And you have to wonder, I mean, nature's so smart. Could a part of the reason why we see less allergies and digestive problems in children that were breastfed be because at birth we're meant to drink this milk to create that desirable gut microflora? And that prebiotic oligosaccharides, even I sometimes, trip over that long word, is needed to grow the bifidobacteria, which belongs to a group of bacteria that they call the lactic acid bacteria. And you often find it in fermented foods like yogurt, cheese, and other sour milk products like kefir and that. And so one way our body's defense works is through this barrier that's provided by the mucus layer in the intestines. And this mucosa provides a physical barrier, and it prevents these foreign substances from passing through the gut. As well, it also, there's a large variety of immune cells that are found in the gut mucosa. So they say that the immune system is higher in children that are breastfed. Let's try to tie all this together. So this allows the gut to interact with our immune system. And lactic acid bacteria can stimulate immune activity in this intestinal mucosa. And so they found, even with, they're doing these tests with oral immunization with lactic acid, and it's inducing this protective immune response in mice with Lyme disease. And you think about that, if you know anyone that has suffered with this, how amazing that is. I mean, this is leaps into our own nature that has often been overlooked. And so researchers studying this bifidobacteria lactis have demonstrated that it has this ability to protect the cells from damage, also from gluten protein exposure. How many people do you know? I have family members that I have celiac disease, and you can develop serious intestinal symptoms and this major, damaged small bowel mucosa from the wheat protein. And if it's untreated, the patient is at risk for all kinds of cancers and other conditions. And so typically the only treatment for this problem has been you're just gluten-free for your whole life. And that's almost impossible. If you know anything about the gluten cross reactivity, you know that it's almost impossible to completely be free of any sort of gluten proteins entering your system for your entire life. So they're doing testing and independent studies, and they are determining that this bifidobacterium lactis is able to block the toxic effect of wheat gluten. And there's further research going on to determine if it could be used as a dietary supplement for preventing damage done to these celiac patients from accidental gluten contamination. Well, I also know that undenatured whey protein that I've talked about for years has growth-promoting activity through the bifidobacteria. And so we're starting to see we are eliminating things from our diets that our ancestors would have eaten. As we are doing that, and as we are modifying our food, we are seeing an increase in nutritional problems. Do you think that they are somehow related? Could be. So that's something definitely to think about. So we'll be, thinking of just the dairy products, that's always been the preferred medium to reintroduce a viable population of lactic acid bacteria and bifidobacteria into the GI tract for children and adults. Think about what they recommend when you're on antibiotics. And just to increase the numbers of bifidobacteria in the GI tract, and then also an incorporation of prebiotics in the diet. And so we're also seeing on the other side of things And mostly I believe it has to do, in my own opinion, with this A1 milk, not the A2 milk, that they're saying there's this whole population that should just stay away from dairy products altogether. And I think that was kind of the, like, little seed that was planted that started growing this paleo lifestyle. Now, even more so, if we look at the other studies that are being done out there, they're studying for like type 2 diabetes, because we know that this is this big metabolic problem, and that if they take high-fat diet-fed mice that have developed insulin resistance and inflammation, that it is directly dependent on their gut bacteria. This bifidobacteria has been shown to reduce their intestinal endotoxin levels and, again, improve that mucosal barrier function. And so when they increase the gut bifidobacterial content in these high-fat diet-treated mice, they find that reduced exotoxemia and improved glucose tolerance and insulin secretion, as well as reducing inflammation. I mean, it's so cool. I just geek out. You know, it's like I get like all chills running down like my arms and stuff when I talk about these sort of things. I just find it amazing, but the information isn't getting out there. Now, one thing you need to know about the oligosaccharides is that almost 90% of them escape digestion in the small intestine, and they reach the colon, the colon. Yeah, my notes are all over my thing here. I'm a little sticky notes. That's funny. They reach the colon. Sorry, Colin, if you're listening. They're not reaching you unless you're eating them. Anyway, they perform a different function there, and that's the prebiotic. And so that's why I really feel like, you know, these lectins are really hearty proteins that they don't break down easily. They're resistant to the stomach acid and the digestive enzymes. And, I mean, they're mints. I mean, they bind to the gut wall. And so, you know, with this problem with our mucosal lining, they end up damaging the gut lining. And with, you know, a lot of us don't have the proper digestive enzymes, and they're not altered really by most of the digestive enzymes. And so they can actually alter this gut permeability and pass through the gut into our general circulation. And so they can start causing all these issues that could be related to food allergies and related to IBS and colitis and Crohn's disease and celiac and all of these other things that have to do with gut permeability. And it allows these non-lectin proteins to cross undigested into our systems, which is causing all of these allergic reactions and anaphylaxis. And they can bind to cell membranes in the our arteries and our organs and glands and thyroid and pancreas and adrenals. And so think about all the problems we're seeing in humans, all the problems that are on the rise. And it all comes back to the food and the gut. And so this binding may be the beginning of this antigen-antibody reaction that leads to a lot of these autoimmune disorders and the so-called degenerative diseases. And different lectins have been implicated in different diseases. Dairy lectins have been implicated in juvenile onset type 1 diabetes, and wheat lectins have been implicated in juvenile diseases as well. And so, you know, while this lectin is, they think is stripping away the mucosal coating in our digestive tract, and that we're getting this overgrowth of abnormal bacteria and protozoal parasites like Candida, and this whole lectin sensitivity on this spectrum where you have people who are sensitive in varying degrees. But we're finding that we need some of it. So if you need some of it and you're sensitive to it and it's causing damage, how do you heal yourself from this cycle, right? It can be really overwhelming. And so the first thing to figure out is what do you have? So, you're going to do an allergy test and you're going to find out for sure what are you allergic to. And then you're going to think about the foods that you can eat that, end up being the least sensitive to someone that is sensitive to the lectins. So for solid proteins, that's often going to be the pastured chicken. Beef can be really inflammatory, so I don't recommend beef, even if it's grass-fed. Pea protein, fantastic paleo-veggie protein source because it is confirmed to be lectin-free. You could do the pea protein. I know that the pea protein is being used in a lot of foods like the Beyond Beef crumbles are being made with the pea protein. Amino acid supplementation. Fantastic option to increase your proteins and heal your leaky gut. Nutritional yeast. I've also heard cooked tempeh, organic of course, is good. Myself, not something I can eat even if I wanted to due to how severe my allergies have gotten over the years. Hemp milk is pretty low in lectins and really easy to make yourself. I love hemp milk. But now we're starting to get into those nuts and those seeds. And so that's where you have to remember that if you do a soak for 12 to 24 hours, it really dissolves a lot of that high lectin value and reduces the impact it's going to have. You're going to, rinse it off, and the level of what it's going to do to your body is going to really change. Now, I know that a lot of people, they say, oh, I can't eat fruit because I have candida. Well, it's not necessarily that you can't eat fruit because you have candida. It's probably the lectins because a lot of fruits have highly aggressive self-defense lectins. And so they should never be eaten with other foods. And you should never eat a whole bunch of fruit all day long. There was this interesting study that my husband found where they were studying this plant. And they found that there was a caterpillar that lived in the area where this plant grew. And they have the whole genome process done on these guys, and so that's why they use it a lot for study. And they found that when this caterpillar is eating the plant, that it makes this sound at this specific frequency. And what they found is if they made that same tone, same frequency around the plant, that it did exactly what it does in the wild when the caterpillar tries to eat it. It secretes this toxic, poisonous, serum that to stop the caterpillar from eating it. It doesn't have a nervous system, so it's not, in pain, and it's not saying, hey, quit eating me because I'm in pain. It's trying to have this self-defense mechanism of don't eat me. Well, there's a lot of foods out there that we shouldn't be eating. And we shouldn't be eating lots of them, and yet we do anyway. So if that's interesting, you may want to go look that up. I found this really brilliant series of articles done by Larry Miller. And he talks about, the food diets, by the blood type, and how does food combine. And part of what he talks about is how to decoy your body. How to go in there and say, this is a decoy food. I'm going to trick you. I am a spy. And you can do that when you're eating lectins. So some of the foods that can act as these decoys that lectins are attracted to is, we went back, remember I talked about the sugars. And when it attaches, when a lectin attaches to the sugar, then it can be eliminated from the body, which means it is going to make it to the colon to be that prebiotic, right? It has to get there to be eliminated. Now, you have to really think about what foods you're taking. Don't want to have an adverse reaction because you're saying, I'm going to eat this because it's going to be a decoy. No. Make sure it's a food that's right for you. Nutritional truth, I talk about that. But one of the foods he talked about that I thought was interesting was D-mannose, which is a naturally occurring simple sugar. And it's found in a variety of fruits and vegetables. And so it can be made, mannose can be made from glucose in the body. It can help prevent harmful bacteria from attaching to that mucosal lining. It can do that as well in the urinary tract and stop for someone that, has a lot of UTIs. And it does that with the foreign substances such as leptin. Now, D-mannose does not kill bacteria. It just prevents bacteria from attaching to the cell walls in the body. And so, unlike an antibiotic, the bacteria is eliminated without the bacteria becoming resistant. I think that's really important. They did a research study, and data said that E. coli is effectively removed from the body with D-mannose. They also, though, I want you to know, if you're looking at supplementation, that they found that a lot of this synthetic D-mannose contains this residual trace of harmful chemicals like formaldehyde. So I tend to try to say stick to the real foods, and remember that whenever you're looking at supplementation. So since the body metabolizes D-mannose differently than most sugars, it also doesn't encourage that candida yeast overgrowth. It doesn't cause an insulin response, and so it isn't detrimental to diabetics when taken in recommended amounts. Talk to your doctor, find out what that amount is. It's an easy supplement for the body to recognize. It's not going to be attacked as some sort of foreign invader like a lot of supplements cause. And so, look for these foods that it's naturally occurring in. It's in cranberries and cranberry juice. Why do you think that they recommend cranberry juice for UTI? It's in black and red currants, chokeberries, gooseberries, blueberries, bilberries, oranges. It's in, let's see, what else is it in? It's in peaches, green beans, broccoli, green coffee beans, turnips, cabbage, guar gum. I know a lot of you have problems with me saying that word, so just pretend you didn't hear it. Eggplant, kelp, shiitake mushrooms, which is a favorite, cayenne pepper, another favorite, fenugreek, kidney beans, lima beans, and soybeans. Organic only, please. Now, aloe vera, 8% of metals, but I don't recommend it because some of these whole leaf aloe products have been shown to produce major abdominal pains and diarrhea in some people. And also those that are allergic to like onions and garlics and those similar families, they could have a problem with aloe. So just keep that in mind again. So just think about this combination, this great prebiotic of the leptin combined with the D-mannose and that glorious bifidobacteria. That's this whole healthy rejuvenation for your gut. And so I almost laugh when I think about the D minerals containing foods, because it's like looking at the wall of the most popular diet supplements out there. Am I right? So start thinking outside of the box and think about a little food combining and maybe some food elimination that you should do, and start thinking about creating this health, this happy health, this happy world with the lectins that you do eat because you do need them, as well as overcoming some of the leptin resistance that we see today. So this is Barbara Christensen again, and I hope that you have listened and enjoyed and found something that kind of connected you to get out there and do some more research. You can find me online, and I'll post those links below. And I just hope that you have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.